Hey everyone, welcome back to some new malicious compliance stories. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called It's Your Job to Clean It. Years ago, I worked for a high-end contracting company. It was a small business, about 10 people total, including the 3 owners. 2 were brothers and were in charge of large renovations, and the third was in charge of all the custom cabinetry and high-end furniture we made in the shop. He was my direct boss. I only ever interacted with the brothers occasionally, normally in the mornings and afternoon when they would come to pick up and drop off tools in the cargo van. Part of my shop duties every day included cleaning up the tools and putting them away, and I can't leave until it's done. Now the brothers had a bad habit of never washing off the mixing stick for cement. Every day it would come back caked in dried concrete that I would have to spend up to an hour breaking off. I'd asked them several times to just wash it down with a hose after they'd used it, but was always met with, "Oh yeah, we'll remember next time." After a few months of this, I was getting pretty frustrated. One extremely hot summer day, I was sitting on the dock of the shop, waiting for them. I was caked in sweat and sawdust from making cabinets all day, and was in a bad mood. They pull up, and we start unloading. Lo and behold, they hadn't cleaned the stick again. The base of it was practically a complete ball. Seriously? What the heck? Oh yeah, sorry. How hard is it to wash it off? I've asked for months. It's your job to clean it. Just clean it. Cue the malicious compliance. I lifted it up, brought my arm back and swung it as hard as I could at the side door of the cargo van. The sound of denting metal was huge. Most of the concrete blasted off of it. I handed the stick to the flabbergasted brother and said, "There, I cleaned it," before walking back into the shop. Both brothers wanted to fire me, but couldn't. The third guy was my boss and refused. He told me a month later that every time he saw the dent, he laughed. They always brought it back clean afterward. Why I didn't just bang it all the time? It's a $15 tool. If I banged it clean each day, it would be so bent that it would need to be replaced each week. That would get expensive. And why I didn't have to pay for damage to the van? It was a paid-off, brutalized van already. My hourly rate was more than the cost of repair for the several months I cleaned it. Since it was already dented, another one didn't matter in the grand scheme. The next story is called It's Rude to Interrupt Someone While They Are Talking. This happened years ago. I was working as Tier 2 customer support for a large financial credit card company that also issued prepaid cards. A customer had called in, and because Tier 1 support could not provide the answers he wanted, they needed Tier 2 to try providing a resolution. When I answered the call, the customer came in already hot and explained to me how he was a doctor and this was a waste of his time and we should bow down to his request. He wanted the option to deposit money through the ATM to his prepaid card. I started to explain that the only available option with the prepaid card was that he could only withdraw from the ATM and that there was not an option to make deposits through the ATM to the card. He was upset that I wasn't fixing his problem. I was still way too low on the corporate totem pole to make this type of change to the product. He demanded that I tell the big bosses that these changes need to be made. And then he starts a long rant, and in order to end the call, as he was talking to the wrong people, I start to explain all the details of the card he signed up for and check the box for having read and agreed with the card services. I know we all do that without really reading them. He then yells at me that it is rude to interrupt someone as they are talking. It was a slow day at work, and rather than try arguing with someone so stubborn, in my most polite customer service voice, I apologized and asked him to proceed. I muted my phone line and did not listen to anything more he said. He continued his long rant for another 5 to 10 minutes. He finally wears himself out and the line goes quiet. I waited another minute of silence before he asked if I was going to respond. I unmuted my line and informed him I did not intend to interrupt him as he requested, then asked if it was my turn to respond. He confirmed I could now talk. Once again, I start to read over the card policies and how deposits through an ATM were not part of the program. He interrupts me and I instantly throw his line back how it is impolite to interrupt someone as they are talking. He goes quiet for a moment. When I finish my spiel, he finally blows up. Luckily, the policy states that once a customer starts to use profanity, I have all the right to disconnect the call. I inform him if he continued using the language, the call will be ended, and he became even more irate. At this point, I interrupt him to say that the call will be terminated and to have a nice day, then promptly hung up on him. The third story is called precious efficiency stats. This took place several years ago. I used to be a cashier at Aldi. For those of you guys that have never been to an Aldi store, upfront the store policy is that they have one cashier working at a time who is expected to move very fast. This way they don't open up additional registers unless more than 2 people are waiting behind the person checking out. This is because they only ever have 2 to 4 employees running the store at any given time to save on expenses. It's not the way I would choose to run a grocery store, but it's how Aldi chooses to run theirs, so hey, not my call. After a few months of busting my butt ringing, I get pulled into the office. I'm freaking out, trying to figure out what I could have done. Apparently, my crime was that I needed to stop using the restroom immediately after 5+ hours locked into place ringing, or I would be written up for time clock fraud. The time clock is located in the back, and the restroom's up front by the cash register. So, after holding it for hours so I can keep ringing uninterrupted without having to call another employee off the floor and affect their precious statistics, they expect me to walk all the way across the store to clock out. And then I should spend 5+ minutes of my half-hour break trekking back across the store twice on my own time to use the restroom. Being a person who knows their OSHA rights, I simply just stopped holding it till break. From then on, I always made sure to shut down my lane to go to the restroom right when I needed to go, usually like around 3 hours into work, instead of waiting to be let up. This way, someone had to come off the floor for at least 10 minutes or so to open my lane. They could have just had the 2 to 3 minutes it takes me to go to the bathroom affecting their daily stats, but now it's 10 to 15 minutes of pulling someone off the floor instead. Very good for efficiency stats. The next story is called Under No Circumstances. I had just been hired as an administrative assistant at a large antiquarian store / auction house in a small city in New England. The owners, my bosses, were a husband and wife team, who I shall refer to as he boss and she boss. It was a small crew of employees, a couple of furniture movers, the person who did furniture restorations and clock repair, a woman who sold custom lampshades, and me. This was a time way back in the dark ages when a company had to pay through the nose for long distance phone calls. She boss had her desk in the middle of the sales floor where she could keep an eye on everything. She had a standing order that under no circumstances was I to take a message from someone calling out of state. I was to let her know that the out-of-state caller was on the phone, so she would not have to call the person back and incur the long-distance charges. That made sense, was an understandable directive, with which I complied. These two were difficult people to work for though. I never seemed to be able to please them. At one point the company was holding the largest auction of antiquities they had ever done. The catalog was immense and people were calling from all over the country to ask Chibos questions about specific items. When these calls came in, I immediately notified her and she always took their calls. Then a very wealthy client came in and asked for a personal preview of the auction. Chibos said to me, under no circumstances am I to be disturbed while I'm with this client. She then disappeared with the client into the auction hall. It was coming on afternoon, which meant that the West Coast was just starting the day. During the roughly 2 hours that Chibos was with the client, I took something like 40 messages for her from various places. My workspace was on the second floor, where there was a balcony that ran around 2 sides, overlooking the very large sales floor. I generally kept my door to the balcony closed, because the echoing volume of the sales floor made it hard to hear on the telephone. When Chibos finally came out of her meeting with the client, she saw the very thick stack of messages that were left on her desk. The unintelligible screech that resulted was damaging to my ears, and presumably those of everyone else in the building. I had no choice but to open my door and look out over the balcony down to the distorted, red splotched face of Chibos as she proceeded to curse at me worse than I had ever been chewed out before. She demanded to know why I had taken all of these messages from out-of-state callers and threatened to take the cost of returning the calls out of my paycheck. I replied, "You told me that you were not to be disturbed. It's not my fault that you can't remember what you've ordered people to do." Needless to say, I did not last very much longer at that job. The last story is called You Need to Fix It. The machine that takes in the bottles that have a deposit fee on them was broken. The machine couldn't scan the bottles, so the customers wouldn't get their money back. A customer told me about it, so I told my manager. He told me that I should take care of it, because he was on break and the customers came to me. I told the customer that I couldn't help her and that she needed to come back some other time when it was fixed. My manager said that handling things in that way was also not acceptable. I started to get a little bit infuriated, so I decided to go back to the work I was supposed to do. Customers kept on coming to me with the same problem, so I went back to the manager, who literally told me, "You are at work, customers complain to you, it's your problem." I told my coworkers about it. They told me that it has happened before and that a mechanic was required to fix the problem. My manager got angry at me because I told him this. He told me that I needed to find a solution to the problem or I would get fired. I started thinking what I could do to fix it, but I couldn't figure it out since I work at a grocery store as a 17-year-old who has never fixed something like this. Then my stubborn side took over, so I decided to fix the problem my way. I took a broom and punched a hole in the seal that keeps the bottles from falling down. Then I put a big plastic bag on the other side of the machine for the bottles to fall into. My manager lost it and told me I need to fix it in a better way right now. So I put the plastic bag in his hands and told the 12 customers that were waiting for the machine to work to give their bottles to my manager and he would take care of it. The manager then sent me home as he was raging and yelling at everyone. The next day I had to work again and the mechanic was there to fix it. He told me that I made the situation with the machine worse, but that he had to laugh when he heard the story about my manager. I then heard that my manager got fired by his boss for losing his cool and that I handled the situation very well. To this day I still wonder what story was told to the boss, but I still have my job and the manager is long gone. Thanks for watching the video, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the video in the comment section below. Have a great day, stay safe, bye bye.